Let's do it.
All right, awesome, awesome. So let's begin. Dose of Dental Podcast, the new project. This is Victoria. Victoria, thank you so much for coming on today. We really appreciate this. You know me, this is Sean. He's an ortho resident. He'll be graduating in a year and a half. So like we're really serious about looking into things now, so we know what to expect. We really appreciate you coming on. Could you give us like a 1-2 minute thing? Just tell us where you're at now, where you came from, and how you got to this point, right? The dental hygiene, etc.
All right. So thanks for having me on, first of all. Excited for you guys. Congratulations. You're almost done. A little bit about me. So my name, sorry, there's a little echo. My name is Victoria Martinec. I'm with OMS360. We are a DSO. So we specialize in oral surgery. So, like other DSOs, unlike DSOs, where there's general peds and all of those things in one, we just focus on oral surgery. And that's what we have in our practices. How I got here. So with OMS360, I recruit surgeons for them. How I got here, there are a series of events, but long story short, I started off as a hygienist, and then come to find out it wasn't the technicality of cleaning teeth that I love so much. It was more of building relationships with my team members, the staff, the doctors, especially, just helping them, I guess, figure out what they want to do and navigating their ups and their downs and their struggles and personal development for me. So moved up in my career through operations, clinical support, and then now recruiting for doctors. And what I really love about recruiting for providers is that, one, I am one, or I used to be one, so I can really speak to how you guys feel, what you guys are looking for, and why it matters so much for you to keep your clinical autonomy. And two, I feel like I'm pretty relatable. So I can really advocate for my doctors, right? I'm not a recruiter. I hate it when people say she's a recruiter. No, she's just my advocate. Like, she's a friend, advocate, somebody that I can talk to and lean on. So that's me.
Awesome, awesome. How'd you go from dental hygiene to dental 360, like OMS 360? As far as like, were you always in DSO? Is that kind of how the jump?
So yes, I was always in the DSO space. Now, I will say, coming out of hygiene school, I did not want to join a DSO. I had it in my head that it's like a no-go. DSOs don't do it, private practice only, right? But when I got out of school, there were dental hygienists that were going into offices and they keep their jobs for like 30 years. And so nobody was leaving. And so I didn't have a choice. I was like, throwing my resumes like everywhere. Hey, hire me. Hey, hire me, please, please, please. And really, the only place I was hiring full time was a DSO. But I'm thankful that it happened that way.
Why are you thankful that happened that way?
Well, so I wasn't open-minded. I will say that that's something that I learned from I wasn't open-minded. While I was working at the DSO, I had the chance to work also at a private practice for 1 day a week. And so I got to see both sides of it. And I was like, you know what? I'm really glad that there was no space for me in the private space area. I'm not saying, obviously, that all DSOs are great. I'm not saying that all private practices are bad. It's just what worked for me and the environment and the growth opportunities. So I really liked the DSO aspect more.
Awesome, awesome. To start on like the interview and application phase right now, maybe a recent experience, just if you could kind of explain what you're doing with oral surgeons to sign them up, broadly relating it to, because it's one category, right? It's one niche within it's one specialty within dentistry itself, but we're all out here, whether we're in orthodontics, pediatrics, or general dentistry, applying for practices, and the job hunt is not easy, so I hear. So how can we prepare for this in the short time that we have? Just hitting on some major points, maybe the top 3 to 5 points.
Okay, so I would say maybe we can have an offline conversation, but how is it not easy, right? Like, it's a hard market. I feel like for you guys, the providers in general, I mean, people are dying for you guys. Like, they want and I say guys, girls and gals, guys and girls, right? They need surgeons, or they need orthodontists, they need peds, they need all of the providers, right? But I would say to prepare you for the interview process or to get you going, I always say use the strategy rope. So ROPE. That's R for doing your research, being prepared, right? So know ahead of time what you're going into. Is it a DSO? Is it a private practice? Is it a private practice that may be affiliated or in the process of affiliating with the DSO, right? I've ran into situations to where some of the candidates were like, no, I don't want to go with you guys because you're a DSO. I'm like, okay, so where have you decided? And lo and behold, oh, guess what? We're acquiring them in the process of it. So, it's do your research, right? And be prepared. And then for the it's being open-minded and humble. So like me, I was not open-minded. I was pushed in a corner, and I'm glad that happened, but also being humble too. A lot of the residents that I talk to, and I don't just have oral surgery residents. I'm involved with ortho, plastics, ENTs, and it seems like most of them that I've talked to have this mentality of, I know how to do everything, I know it all, and it's going to be my way or the highway. Just from the ones that I've talked to, there are some of them, I would say about 40% of them, that are like, you know what, I'm here to learn, I'm here to grow. And that really excites me. Those are the people that I want on my team, right? So if that's you out there, then kudos to you, because that's what I look for most in an interview, is somebody that's open-minded and can be humble. So what I mean by humble is, obviously, if I know that you're going to be great at whatever role you decide or whatever specialty you're in. You went to school, you went to training, you can do that. The issue is never about if they can do the actual procedure or anything like that. It's, can you do that and be in a practice setting? Can you handle the ins and outs of every day dealing with, your staff? Let me turn this off. Your staff, having to do those on top of learning how to be a leader, right? I think that that's something that a lot of programs don't teach. They don't teach you how to be a leader, and that's what's important to me. The way things are going these days, I'm not looking for somebody that can produce. I'm looking for long-term, and I'm looking for somebody that has leadership abilities. So being open-minded for the O. The P, people and culture. You want to know about the people and the culture of what you're getting into. And we can talk more about how you find out or what that looks like. And I always encourage going to the practice and meeting them, right? I mean, Zoom is great. All of this is great, but nothing can compare to having that interaction first and foremost. And if you can really do it, go to the practice and visit when there's patients there. You can get a real feel for how things are going, right? And then the E part, the engage and ask questions. So if you can ahead of time with like a mentor, write down questions, prepare questions. And I would say prepare at least 10, because if you write 5 down and then they answer 4 of them during the interview process, then you're like, oh crap, I got 1 left that I can ask, right? So just write 10 down, and that's how you prepare. So that would be my strategy and recommendation for you guys.
Victoria, is it safe to say that you've reviewed a lot of applications for people applying?
Yes. So for doctors, I've probably reviewed over 300. And so that's just for the doctors, and obviously for hygienists, it was way more than that, and front office staff. But yeah, for doctors, over 300. And I've gotten to interview, quite a few. Everything looks great on paper, right? But I always want to get to know people, and it's not when I'm interviewing, it's not hey, so tell me about your strengths and your opportunities. It's tell me who you are as a person. What do you like to do on the weekends? I want to make sure that they feel comfortable enough to ask me the questions that they want to ask me, and us walking away with feeling like, okay, if I have additional questions that I may have been scared to ask in the beginning, I feel free to call her and ask her now, or even ask me then.
You jumped me to my second question, because we Brendan and I have always discussed there's such a big difference between what people put down on paper and who they are in person. And people think that their paper will always carry them through their life because they spent so long in school focusing on, getting the stuff on paper to look so great. But when they come in person, that makes such a big difference. Um, However, just going back to that piece of paper for a second, because a lot of us are starting to write up our resumes, starting to write up our cover letters. What are some things that you see people making mistakes on? What's some advice you have for that piece of paper that'll set us for the path to success?
So I will say that one of my mentors taught me that if I can pull your resume up on the computer and about, I mean, 3/4 of the screen, and I don't feel like, I'm getting anywhere with anything or it's not useful information, then it's too much, right? So you've got too much fluff in there. I would say, obviously, put your education. I want to know where you studied. I don't really, I don't say care, but it's not as important if you, worked at Dunkin' Donuts when you were 16 years old. Love Dunkin', by the way, but now if it was something that would, taught you customer service, right? So I would say maybe put that and say, oh, well, customer service on there. You were, employee of the month for 6 months in a row because you had outstanding customer service. But then I would put that under like rewards and recognition, right? So yeah, you have that space right there so that you can put any accolades that you wish to call out on. And I don't think that saying that you were employee of the month at Dunkin' Donuts for customer service is something to be ashamed of. I would totally put that number one on there. Because for me, it's all about customer service. And if you can make the patients feel good, or if you can make those customers feel good, you can make the patients feel good. I hope that helps.
100%. Victoria, I really like that. No, that's a huge point. Because connecting with patients, just like customers and clients, is arguably what I don't know. When Sean and I look at people that we've had people working with us on the podcast and events I could go on, but a people person is something that, like you said, is not trained. You don't learn that in school. You either have it or you don't, and you usually have it because you worked prior to the experience. Employee of the month usually goes a long way. No, but what I wanted to get to, remember in one of our first messages on Instagram, you had said one of the best questions you recommend asking on an interview is to say, how does your practice measure success? That really resonated with me. So I kind of want to, can we just kind of like replay that again, and then why?
Yes. So I came up with this question myself because I asked this myself. I asked this practice, how does your practice measure success? That will give you a real feel on the culture, the people. I mean, the people that you're going to be employed by. And so a couple of things can happen, right? If they automatically say, oh, I measure success by how much money I make. If that's what you're going for, right? And that's what you feel like is sustainable long-term for you, then great. Maybe that's the place for you. But really what you're looking for is, well, for me, what I'm looking for is the engagement, my team engagement, right? Because so whenever we think about team engagement, so engaged teams are relatively, for the most part, they're going to be high performing teams, right? High performing teams are happy teams because whenever you're high performing, I mean, everybody as a human has a sense of, oh gosh, like, I feel great about what I did. And they love to see them winning and being successful. So when you're high performing, you have increased morale. And whenever you're happy, your patients are happy. They can feel that too. And then it's a cycle. The patients are happy. They're going to tell their friends, oh my gosh, I went to this dental office and I don't really know what they did for me, but they were great. I love them. Their attitude is great, right? Go there. And so really it's like a cycle of, how do you measure success? If your patients are happy, your business is going to be happy and it's going to be successful.
Right. How do you keep your colleagues happy? So I'm not so sure of the DSO's model as far as like multiple practices, town versus multiple providers in one office versus one provider in an office. I'm sure you have multiple types, but something I've noticed in a culture, for example, just a random office, let's say a DSO now becomes involved, and let's say the dentists are now making what they keep what they make versus a private practice model where it used to be would all the earnings would go into a pot and then it kind of gets divided more or less evenly. I've heard how the culture can change because now you keep what you make, and maybe your colleague, they'd be definitely happy if they get the $36,000 all on 4 and 6 case, but you'd also be really happy if you got that $36,000 case. So how do you look for an office, if you can reverse engineer this thought here, how do you look for an office that's predicated on always ensuring that all the colleagues are happy?
So if that were the case, right, and all DSO models are different, so their compensation plans can be different, right? But I would say for us, we typically acquire practices, and so if we were walking into a practice that had 2 doctors, right, we would then evaluate what their compensation is like now and try to match that and make it even to where they're not going to have to fight for that production, right? I mean, at the end of the day, it always comes back to doing what's right by the patient. If you do what's right by the patient, the money will always follow. And I will tell you that I was in a similar situation to where I was an associate hygienist and there was a lead hygienist, and we were going to be put together on a lead associate model, and we were not having it. We were just, I mean, we were sliding patients over, like just in separate rooms, just, nope, I'm taking this person, nope, I'm taking this person. And the office manager had to pull us into the room and say, what are you guys doing? Like, get it together. And I was like, I saw her as a new patient. I deserve them on my schedule, yada, yada. And then when it came down to it, we thought, you know what, like, it's all going to come back around, because I may have seen them as a new patient and this person may have gotten to do it, but then it's going to come around to where she's going to see this other person as a new patient. I won't be there, or, my schedule may be busy, and then they'll get put on their schedule. But at the end of the day, as long as you do what's right by the patient, there's going to be enough there for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just about working together. And that is something that I look for whenever I am interviewing people. I always, one of the things that I ask is, I mean, can you tell me about a time where you had to be a team player, a specific situation, right? And how you stepped up and were that team player? Or can you tell me about a time where you had to have a difficult conversation that you didn't want to have, and
Right.
how, what that looks like? And so a lot of times I would say most people aren't prepared for situational questions. I wasn't, at least I was prepared for, like, okay, like, I don't know, what's the tooth that's next to tooth number, blah, 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 or, things like that I learned that are just like anatomy and things like that. But no, they want to know situational things and how you can deal with conflict resolution and leadership abilities, mentorship. Like, what is your capacity to learn and to grow as a provider and as a person, really?
You mentioned mentorship. I know that's a big thing in all dentists, oral surgeons, orthodontists, pediatric dentists, is when you're looking for a practice, kind of asking mentorship. Is there a way? But I know a lot of interviewers, they can't really, they're not as transparent about it. And I know a lot of friends of mine, they signed on and took a little bit less of a pay cut in hopes of and guarantees of being mentored, that never actually happened. Is there any way to mitigate this on an interview to make sure, like, yes, there's mentorship involved, mentoring involved?
So I would say, obviously, you want to get things in paper, right? And even if it is on paper, does that mean it's going to happen? No, right? But you can only do what you can do and trust your gut. I would say, to try to mitigate that as much as possible, ask if you can speak to somebody that is on this path to partnership and mentorship.
Oh, I like
right?
that.
If they're like, really can't give you anybody, or say, give you anybody to talk to, it's red flag, right? I mean, maybe it's they're just, I don't know, trying to get you to sign on, just to say that they have something. But always say, oh, that sounds great. I'm so excited about this, mentorship program. Do you have anybody that's going through it now that I can speak with?
I like that. And for example, this OMS360 allow, say if I was interviewing with you guys, would I would be able to speak with someone at the office that's currently working there, or?
Yes, I encourage it, and it literally is music to my ears when they're like, can I speak to somebody that is in the office? Can I meet with the doctors that are working these practices? You know, it's like, yes, you actually care. You're not just okay, whatever, sure. Sounds great. You know, I want somebody that's doing their due diligence, because that's the type of person that I would like in my practice.
Yeah.
Do you,
Yeah.
Victoria, do you feel like that mentality has changed in applicants recently? Where I know you mentioned before, where people come in thinking that I'm the doctor and I know everything and I know what's what. Do you feel like that's a mentality that has progressed, since you've started to where we are now, or has that always been the case? Because we feel that sometimes we see a lot of people that kind of live and die by their, by the accomplishments they've had, through dental school, college, residency, but they don't understand those rewards don't, affect how you work with patients. So do you feel like that's something that's been continuing, or have we been just reading a little too much into it?
I think that, you know, there has definitely been an increase in it. And I think that it's heightened in conjunction with the pandemic. I think that people naturally are impatient more so now than ever. And I think that it's the combination of, I've got a lot of student loans, I've got a lot of student debt. They're impatient, they want things to happen now, right? These are things that sometimes I go through myself. I find myself being impatient, right? And it's that in combination with, I'm a doctor, I went for XYZ years, and this is what I deserve. But you got to really think about it, as you're stepping into a place with a doctor that actually has been doing this for 20 years, maybe, right? I mean, maybe 20, 25, 30, 50. I mean, either way, they've got more experience than you do, right? And so naturally, they're going to have something that you can benefit from and learn from. I mean, it's having that open openness to learn and asking the questions, right? The doctors that I work with are like, I love that associate that we have. I mean, she just wants to ask all the questions and she's soaking it all in. And she just like follows me around. It's like, where are we going to go now? And you know, it's like, they just like, I love that. And instead of, you know, being mad about, you know, somebody taking up their production, it's no, like we get to sit like next to each other, elbow to elbow, and we get to, you know, I get to show her how to do this, or she gets to ask questions, or she'll do this, and then I'll assist, and it's really nice. So I would say I think it's a combination of things, but yes, it does seem like that there's an ego with it. And I don't know if it's because when people started their training and schooling, they had all these dreams and thoughts of, okay, one day I'm going to go out and open up my own practice from start to finish, right? Build it from the ground up. And now that landscape has completely changed from when they started, even from when they're about to end now, even in those just short few years. When you think about it, that's even going to change even more in the next 2 years. And so that's a lot for somebody to process. And when I say like I can relate with you guys, and that's where I can level with you, it's, you know, some of the people, some of the big DSO spaces are like, oh gosh, these residents are so entitled, blah, blah, blah. It's this and that, they want this. And I'm like, you got to think about it. This is not what they were expecting. Their whole world is turned upside down, and they're seeing patients all the time. They're in school, like their schedules are busy nonstop, and they really hadn't had time to really digest like what is going on out there, right? And so I get it, it's a lot, but if you're open-minded and you're you know, willing to learn about what's going on in the world with the DSO space and private equity and things like that, then you're in good hands. You just have to be open.
You mentioned that you have to be open to it, that we don't get to learn we're not exposed to it, and then we just jump out and there it is. And the worst part is that we don't really get taught about it either. We don't have a whole lot of classes where let's explain what private equity and DSOs are, what private practice is like, and what these things are when we come out into the field after all these years of schooling and focusing on patients and stuff. So it is a big problem. And you mentioned earlier with your ROPE acronym that you want to be prepared and be ready. So when someone is searching up an office, preliminarily looking at online website, what are some key things that we're looking on here? Because I feel like a lot of websites can, everybody wants to show that their patients are always so happy, and they put all their great Yelp reviews on there, but every office is obviously different. So when you're looking
So,
through all these things, what are some things that we should look for to be prepared?
so when I say do your research, right? I mean, like, get back to like your MySpace creeping days, right? So like, there's so many forums now, right, online that you can join, like dental nachos. I'm part of that, or Dental Hacks Nation. And you can literally anonymously put, or you can ask them to anonymously put, hey, look, I have an interview with so and so, or I am wondering about so and so. Can anybody tell me about this, right? And I'm not saying that what people say, you use it as Bible, use it to your own discretion, right? But I mean, you're able to do your research and see what the majority of people are saying. There's Glassdoor, right? Talk to a friend of a friend that knows somebody that's affiliated with them. This space is so small that somebody that knows somebody that knows somebody that's affiliated with them. So not just the website, right? Because of course everybody's website is, oh yeah, we give clinical autonomy. We want you to be happy. Our patients are happy. All of this, right? But I mean, you really have to do your due diligence, and don't ask a question during the interview that you can find on the website, right? Like one time I interviewed somebody, and and it was for obviously the OMS360, and they asked me if I feel bad for saying it. No, they asked me if I was hiring for an orthodontist. So I was like, I'm sorry, are you an orthodontist? And they're like, no, but I'm considering. And I was like, okay. So I feel like they really didn't do their due diligence when they, looked on our website, because we're clearly not ortho. Now, had they said, oh, I'm just asking for a friend, then I would have been like, oh, great. We're not hiring for an orthodontist, but I know some people that I can get your friend connected with. So I would say that didn't obviously deter me, because I'm kind of not judgy. Like, I make mistakes all the time, but somebody else could totally say, this person is just not what I'm looking for in the best way possible, and just be turned off completely, right? And so as much as you're interviewing and you feel like you're the interviewee, interview the people too. Interview the recruiter, interview the doctors, ask them questions. This is your future. This is something that means a lot, and you shouldn't take lightly. It shouldn't feel like an interrogation, first of all. And second, it should feel like a conversation. And that these are people that you could really see yourself, I mean, through the thick and thin.
Oh
You're not
man,
always going to be happy every day, right? Like every day is not going to be roses and butterflies and whatever, laying on the beach, things like that. But at the end of the day, I mean, you can look at those people and say, I got their back and they got mine. If you can find a practice like that or a group like that, then I would say that will outweigh pay any day for me.
Oh yeah.
giving us orthodontists a bad name.
No,
I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
I love
I'm
orthodontists.
kidding.
I have two cousins that are orthodontists.
Oh man, yeah. You gotta look up the website first. You figure that's step one.
That's like the number one thing, right?
Yeah. So that's a tough one. That's
Yeah,
a tough one. And I bet
really
that's
is.
something they'll never forget. Unfortunately, I had to learn it on the job.
Right. So, I mean, yes, doing your research about, and if you find something that you aren't sure about, you find out that, they're owned by or affiliated with, private equity. Well, what is private equity, right? And so ask questions like that too. Don't be afraid. I know one time I had a candidate that was afraid to ask compensation, to talk compensation. And that's a very important, like a very important thing, right? In this job process and your future. And so I would say how to transition into that would just be your practice, your practice, your team, all of this sounds great. But can you tell me what compensation looks like? Can we talk about that? what does compensation look like, right? But lean in with it with all of this sounds great. I can see myself, as a part of your team. Can you tell me more about what compensation would look like for me?
Mm,
I
yeah.
feel like that's very gentle, right? And somebody can't say, what do you mean by compensation? And it's way easier than being like, look, how much am I going to get paid?
Right, right. At OMS 360, is compensation different from practice to practice?
Yes.
Now that we're getting
And
into
from
the meat and
location to
potatoes.
location.
Is it really? Okay. Okay.
Right.
Well,
So this is something that's good for you guys to know too, is that obviously, a location that is in a rural area that somebody just may not, look super appealing to be out of the city, right? It's not close to the city. It's more in a rural area. There's not DoorDash and Uber Eats in this area. And, and so I'm probably going to pay more for this candidate than somebody that's right in the city of, Atlanta, Georgia, if that makes sense, because it's going to be harder for me to recruit for in that area.
it does make sense, but also to play devil's advocate, wouldn't it be better for the surgeon in that area because there's less competition surrounding?
Yes, so that's why I'm also able to pay more too, right? It's because
I guess it's, yeah, it's not devil's advocate. That's, yeah. Okay. Okay.
so typically, these rural areas, I mean, I've got a practice that in this city there's only one oral surgery practice, and it's them. It is them. And so they have so much demand. It's like, can somebody come here? Anybody right now? I mean, anybody, right? And so, but in Atlanta, there's tons of practices, right? And so they have to split all that patient demand. And so when you think about it, you can't afford to pay somebody as much as you would pay somebody out there.
Yeah. Yeah. Is there any like what's a typical starting percentage or rate? Can we get into that, or is that for another time?
Yeah. Yeah. So I will say that I don't have the experience as far as like the wage bands for, ortho or plastics, but we can talk about oral surgery and what that looks like. And so something that you have to take into consideration, obviously, the location. So I would say somebody in Dallas, Texas right now, right? Dallas, Texas, guarantee anywhere between 225 to 300 right now with a percentage with an incentive bonus of anywhere between 25% to 35% of collections over 1.5 million, 1 to 1.5 million, right?
Mhm.
That's Dallas, Texas. So then I've got Lexington, Kentucky, to where I can guarantee them 500,000, and then same thing for incentive bonus after that.
Not
Then you have
understanding
another
that.
model to where it's straight
Yeah.
off of collections,
I see. I
no
see.
guarantee. And that's for I guess you and that person to decide, and that company to decide. But something that I would take note of is don't ever not ask, right? Always
Right.
ask,
Right.
because you never know unless you ask the question. And the worst thing that somebody could say is no. And that's it. So unless you're afraid to get your feelings hurt, then, ask the questions. Don't miss out on an opportunity because you were scared to ask the question.
Right. 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 We have a minute left. Is it okay if we sign out and then sign back in? I do have a few more questions I'd really like to get to. The meat and potatoes, the importance.
Yeah,
If we
yeah,
Is that okay? We sign out and sign back in. Sean, do you have time?
yeah,
Just a little bit.
yeah.
Okay, please. Yeah. Yeah.
Let's sign out. We'll come right back in.